We're going to start that again. Welcome to a special meeting of the Architectural Review Board. It is 6:35 p.m. on September 21st, 2021. This is a special meeting because it's being done over GoTo. I want to request everybody stay on mute until you are talking. If you are speaking, you must always introduce yourself each time you speak. And if you're not speaking, please stay on mute. We have a packed agenda tonight, so I'm going to keep all our presenters to a couple minutes and then run through ARB questions. ARB members, you know the drill. Here's the order which we will be going tonight. Starting us off, Sherry Green, Dave Riley, Rebecca Morrison, Sean Brown, Leslie McCauley, Marianne Castell, if she's able to log on, and then Dave Humphrey. Alex Lopatinsky is not online tonight, but she sent me comments that I will be adding at the end of each in session. Okay, so let's start it. Yeah, not tonight, Millie. You can do this another night. We got ARB number 20, Westbridge Manor at 410 West Avenue. Whoever's presenting, can you go off mute? I believe, Don, that's you. Go off mute, introduce yourself, and give us a 3-minute overview of your project. We're very familiar with these. We've all looked at the application, so just let us know anything you want us to know beyond the application.
Okay, I assume everybody can hear me? Yes? My mic is on? Okay, thank you.
You're good.
Doug Corbo, 410 West Avenue in Darien. This building was built in 1926, I believe. I'm the third owner. I've owned it for about 46 years. Never had a violation. We made a request to build a dormer on one side of the roof that faces the water company property. Park Lane, which is on one side of the building, is a private road, and the only structure that's on that road adjacent to my building is a building that the water company owns, which is the pump house that pumps water from Stanford to Darien. We made an application, Zoning Board of Appeals. We sent out letters to all the neighbors. There was no objection by anybody. Zoning Board of Appeals ruled that they were okay with the dormer, except they didn't like the size of the one that was designed. They wanted it reduced to match an existing dormer on that same side of the building, which I agreed to do. And then they told me I had to go before your board. And of course, you were on hiatus, and this was the first opportunity we had to discuss it.
Okay, great. Liz Geiger here, Chairman. Thanks, Don. Yep, I know this is a very characteristic building, so we're glad to see it in your changes. So here's how this works, Don. Each ARB member is going to go through one at a time and give you questions or comments. If you can write each of those down, and when everyone has done, I'll let you go back. I'll give you, a minute or whatever to respond if there's anything to respond to. And if not, we'll wrap it up and we'll see where we stand.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
You'll have 8 members, I think. You
want me to go on mute then? Go on mute?
Yeah, please go on mute, and people ask questions, but just write those questions down, and we don't expect you to respond until we're all done. All right, so kick us off here, Sherry.
Hi, Sherry Green, ARB member. I think it looks great. I like the scale of the new dormer, and I think it's very much in keeping with the aesthetics of the building.
Dave Riley, ARB. I completely agree with Sherry. It's, if anything, it looks like it's always been there. So no exceptions on my part.
Rebecca Morrison, ARB. I think it looks great. I assume it projects the same amount of out as it, the width looks comparable. I just want to know what the projection is. And then I guess the only thing that I keep on going back to is it seems like there could be other dormers that could be added in the future, and whether that might happen and whether there should be an overall plan for that. That's it.
Sean Brown, ARB. I second Rebecca Morrison's comments about the future dormers. Otherwise, this dormer looks good.
Leslie McCauley, ARB. I think this dormer looks great. Thank you. Marion Castell, ARB. I think it looks great too.
David Humphrey, ARB, no additional comments. Looks good.
Liz Geiger here. Don, I don't have any additional comments either. I just want to tell you though, I appreciate you coming to our board, and I also like that you've worked hard to make this addition fit in with the style and characteristic of the building. It's much appreciated. So do you want to answer the one question a couple ARB members had about any future additions for other dormers?
Yeah, there's right now there's no anticipation to do anything else. There's only one other apartment that is similar to this one, which is on the other side of the building, the direct other side of the building, which is apartment 208. That has the only similar floor plan. And if the time arises, I would come back when and if I want to do that. And it would just be one other additional dormer that would look exactly like this, and that is it. But right now, I haven't been able to complete this unit, so now it's been empty because I had to go through, meeting all the boards. So it's been empty now for 6-7 months. So I'd like to get it finished so I can get it rented.
Liz Geiger here. Absolutely understandable, Don. Well, we appreciate your time. You did a great job here. That's a favorable report. So I will put this in a letter to you. In the meantime, you can go ahead and work with planning and zoning on the assumption that you get a letter of a favorable report. So Dave Keating can help you, or any of the staff members there.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Don.
Bye.
All right, guys, second agenda of the night, ARB number 21 for 2021. It's Crepes Choupette at 1027 Boston Post Road. I'm not sure if we have David Genovese that is speaking here tonight, or if we have the store owners. Is anyone here? Adil? No one. All right, I guess we're gonna skip over that one. If they come back on, we'll see if we have time to revisit it. That's a shame. Okay. Moving on, ARB number 22, Compass Real Estate, Alina Katz, it's 1090 Boston Post Road. Huh. Dave Keating, your laughing makes me laugh. I got a feeling that Dave Genovese probably, I don't know. I feel like he must be the one presenting and he missed out on this. Okay. We're going to hop to the Commons, Steering Commons. Sarah Ford, you guys ready? Great, you're an ace. All right, this is a revisit of ARB number 19, 2021 continued. It's the ARB Commons by Federal Realty. I know Sarah Ford's on, and maybe Patrick's gonna come on tonight. No? We'll see.
Hi, Liz. Yes, I'm here. Thanks.
Beautiful. Okay, so Sarah, if you want to introduce yourself, we're all familiar with the project, so I would talk. There's something you want to say to us beyond the application. Can you do that? Otherwise, we can go right into ARB comments. Everyone has taken the time to review the application thoroughly before tonight's meeting, so we could jump right to it. Wait, Sarah, I don't have you. It says I have your mic, but I don't hear you.
I'm on mute. Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. Okay, so Sarah Ford with Federal Realty. Based on that introduction, Liz, I'm not going to plan on pulling up the storefront designs. If you guys want me to, I certainly can. Just let me know. In terms of a little bit of history, we first brought the storefront to the ARB in November of 2020. We came back in July of this year and were cut short. So here we are again. Back in July, we submitted the physical samples to Town Hall. Hopefully folks have all had an opportunity to visit and see those materials. Since July, we did receive some initial feedback from the ARB on the storefront designs. And we have made a few tweaks to the proposed designs in response to those comments. One, initially we had proposed 2 options for the retail space, what we call as 102. We provided an anchor tenant option and a second option that would be a multi-tenant option. We felt that that was too many variables, so we took one off the table and we're now specifically asking for approval of that which you see in the most recent package. We also, one of the more notable changes in the storefront designs themselves are retail spaces 302 and 316, both in the R3 building. We previously were proposing specific designs for those corner tenants. We have now removed our base design with the expectation that those tenants that we are currently having conversations with have an appetite and an interest to design their own storefronts. And so we're not proposing them on their behalf, and they will come in directly to the ARB to propose those storefronts. So I think those are the most notable changes in the storefronts themselves. I don't know if you want to do questions, comments on the storefronts, or you want us to bleed into, we also have Peter from Streetworks here tonight to help guide us through the storefront guidelines and the kit parts.
Liz Geiger here. We're going to go straight to comments. I mean, the ARB members have studied this and understand what's happening. So let's dive in, and you guys can listen. And like before, Peter and Sarah write down comments, whatever they have, and we can address them at the end in a 5-minute summary.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Who's starting us off? Dave? No. Right?
No.
Sherry, sorry.
Sherry, yeah. Sherry Green, ARB member. I don't have any comments at this time.
Steve Riley, Architectural Review Board. I think the presentation and the materials that were distributed are very informative. I think, and this isn't a negative comment, I'm just curious to see how, as this gets populated, the palette of choices, the material palette choices end up getting incorporated. And I think this was discussed in July as well. I do recognize that, and this goes back to a previous July comment, what looks to be the lobby, looking at elevation B of building number 1, that those particular elements are going to be locked in. That's just a confirmation. And I think, whether there's what that material palette is for those kind of anchor storefronts, for lack of a better term, for the actual tenants on the floors above, if those are identified. So just going through, there's a lot of material, so I was flipping back and forth quite a bit. So that was my main concern. Otherwise, I think the palette choices, I looked at them back in July at Town Hall. I think they can all work very nicely. Given the myriad of options that the particular tenants can exercise as they come in, and seeing that there are some cutoff points as far as the percentages of what they're trying to incorporate to where it goes in front of ARB, I think is well thought out, just to try to keep some sort of continuity. I know it's not your first rodeo with this kind of thing, and for my part, it's a bit of an education. So I think that was well put together. My last comment would be that the storefront extension and any modifications stop at the cornices, because it appears to me that the cornices are an element that would be locked in. But should a tenant try to somehow incorporate their storefront into the cornices, that would obviously warrant an ARB review, unless there is any sort of strict policy against doing that. So those are my comments overall. Otherwise, I think the presentation looks good, and I would find no exception to it moving forward.
Rebecca Morrison, ARB. I was not a part of the original Federal Realty meetings, as I wasn't on the board, but my comments are that there's a really strong correlation between storefront design, retail storefront, the finishes, the signage, and the lighting, and to look at these packages as separate entities instead of a combination, and how they put those together. I just think it could get a little bit not only confusing, and a little bit too much could be approved unless we're careful. So to me, there needs to be either a list of combos, like you can choose X, Y, and Z, but if you're choosing strictly from different categories and you're allowed the maximum in each category, let's just say, it could eventually, it could feasibly not look as cohesive as I think it should. That's my comment.
John Brown, ARB. I kind of follow up on Dave Riley's comments, but I just have a quick question about and I always forget the name of these windows that go over top of the retail doors. Are they going to be, in these particular spaces where you have tenants that are designing their own, are they permitted to have full height glass all the way up to the top, or is it going to have the separation with the retail storefront door size glass and then the mutton glass above? That's really my question. Or is it going to be, we're going to have to look at these as these tenants come in? Thanks.
Hi, Leslie McCauley, ARB. I think the package looks great. I guess I have one concern, and that is keeping this area with the coastal charm of Darien, and the tile on the front facades of the storefronts, I don't think does. I think the muttons do. I think the pattern panels aren't at all coastal Darien. The opaque panels are more CVS than I think what we're looking for in our neighborhood destinations. I think the eyebrows are pretty. I'd say preferably no to operable doors. And I'm wondering about the package color 3. I think it's very rust and brown. Maybe we could do gray. That's it. Thank you.
Marion Castell. I think each store should continue the same tone in all of the elements, and so you don't have a mixture of styles within one particular store. And I do think the palette of black could be lightened up a little bit, but I think we've already approved that. I agree with the pattern panels. I do not think it fits either that particular state. So that's basically keep it more unified as you can, to keep it so each particular store has a complete unified feeling of what they're trying to project. Thank you.
David Humphrey, ARB. I'm wondering whether, Sarah, after you kind of address some of the other questions, you could just touch on at least a couple of the highlighted changes from the storefront guidelines that you said were updated since the July meeting, such as the tenant enhancements page, where it looks like you've made some updates to try and limit choices, which I think is part of our reservations. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page as what that actually means. I can see, tenants are limited to 3 enhancements. Major enhancements are more limited. It may require review by the ARB. I think we should know what may means, unless I guess that's covered by individual enhancements for limits. I'm also wondering, I get the intent of, or I get the need for coming up with this structure to allow you guys to process and move in tenants as efficiently as possible. I'm wondering whether not necessarily coming to us for tenant approval every month, but some sort of monthly update at this meeting as things start to move forward, might be helpful for us to all kind of see it as it evolves and maybe kind of give some feedback as we get actual selections being made within these guidelines. Not to complicate things, but there's obviously, a lot of tenants that we're moving in, and we might, be able to give some helpful feedback along the way. Because there is, a lot of different choices that could potentially be made by different tenants. So I think I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Liz Geiger, ARB. I'm going to read one comment, one comment sent in by a board member who is actually not online tonight, and then I'll give you my comment, Sarah and Pat. Alex Lopatinsky writes, still very concerned about the potential for a tenant to go bananas on their storefront without any limitations. I'm not in favor of all the potential options. It could be dizzying in the architectural look once all the details are in. I don't have an issue with the unique identity of a tenant, but proposing so many options that will significantly change the architecture. Request to see each tenant storefronts as they are designed. I am going to double down on what Alex said, and I think what Rebecca got at, and kind of what Marion is also saying about the overall review of this. I'm going to say from my end, I want to insist that all the storefronts come to the ARB. I like the palette choice you give them. I like the narrative choices you have here, but doing them all without seeing them in conjunction with one another allows too much room for interpretation and things to go off rail here. So those are my 2 cents. Sarah, you and Pat, 5 minutes to respond. Sorry, I know that's a lot to absorb.
Okay, sorry, I was just taking notes. Okay, so just starting from the beginning with David Riley's comments, I mean that the 2 residential lobbies, those exterior building materials are locked in as shown in design. I need to circle back to confirm what that actual exterior building material is, but it is the tone and the buttons, the windows are locked in as shown. In terms of any storefront modification should stop at the cornice, yes, that is the intent. Should a tenant want to extend beyond the cornice, I don't think we would allow that, but certainly we could bring that back to the ARB if that's what the tenant is proposing. That would be a change. Peter, I'm going to defer to you on Rebecca's comments. I think you can probably answer that better and maybe talk through some of the changes in the guidelines.
Sure, yeah, no problem. I'm just going to share my screen quick so we can take a look at the package that was submitted and some of the changes. In response to your comments originally, and I think that
Peter, I'm going to keep you guys tight. You guys have a couple minutes to go through this stuff. I mean, everyone's pretty familiar with this stuff. Rebecca, we don't need to go through the whole thing just because Rebecca wasn't originally on the ARB. I mean, we got to keep this thing moving. So,
okay.
Do you guys have what? Yeah, I think most importantly, maybe it's time you guys address the fact that it's been requested a number of times now that this whole package, every time you have a new tenant that comes in, the ARB is going to want to see you guys. There's too much going on here. There's the look of the integrity of the architecture. Everyone loves it in style, in design, as it is on this piece of paper. But when it comes to everyone starting to do their mismatch along the way, I think it goes without saying everyone's concerned about what this is going to look like in its entirety without seeing these one by one.
So I guess obviously we're trying to prevent having 5 tenants in here every month for a year and a half and keeping the process streamlined. So I guess what I would ask, is there any consideration for approving the guidelines with the understanding that any major enhancements would have to come back to the ARB? So that would include any of the pattern or opaque panels as well as the eyebrows.
All right, I mean, ARB members, can I put that to a vote? I mean, are you guys comfortable with approving any of these elements to go ahead and be done, or is there anything that, or Do you guys need to see it one? I know I've got a vote from Rebecca and, from myself and Alex on one side. Dave Riley?
Dave Riley, ARB. My comment goes back to, I think it was something that I saw in the package, is that there was kind of a tipping point of where it would go in front of the ARB. So I think to Sarah's point of like, if, for instance, if there is a design that incorporates a pattern panel, then that's an automatic trigger for ARB. But if it's a design that doesn't deviate too far from this, I guess that would be a question whether the zoning office then is able to make that distinction upon the application. Because I do want the process to move forward, but I do agree the uniformity to an extent of the storefronts is important. However, I think individual character, which is part of driving down Main Street in Darien, is also important. I would hate for it to be too homogeneous that you lose what the tenants are for what they're trying to sell.
Sherry?
Hi, Sherry Green, ARB member. I think it's so subjective, and I think there's a fine line between tasteful and going off the rails a little bit. And I would like to see everybody come back. I know that's probably unwieldy, but I would feel safer having each tenant come and make their presentation. Thanks.
Are we going by order, Liz?
Mary, go ahead. You have something to say?
I agree. I think that we should do it. We should come back for each storefront. If they pick something that has some character, not the different, it has to be different a little bit from everything else. We don't want anyone the same, but I think it could be done quickly and coming back to do it.
Sherry?
Sherry Green, ARB. Is that something that could be presented electronically? They show us their proposal and we could do an up or down vote at that point, or do we need to see the whole presentation?
Ms. Geiger, we need to see the whole presentation. Rebecca, do you want to say something?
No, I mean, Rebecca Morrison, this is my bandwidth. I mean, most of you know this is where I've worked in retail design for a very long time. And I really feel that, similar to what Alex was saying, that there needs to be a complete package, and to give people so many options in so many different categories could just be complete mayhem. And if what we're trying to do is make this town look within a certain aesthetic, that there's just, knowing full well, working for large retail companies before and corporations, unless you kind of, people have different aesthetics, and we're trying to put it very Darien into a certain type of demeanor and different place, and giving people this many options is not something that could go really haywire. That's it.
All right, Liz Geiger here. I'm going to wrap this up, Sarah and Patrick. I know you guys want to make this, I know you guys what you're accomplishing here, and we don't mean to make it difficult for you guys. I know you want to work with us, we want to work with you too, but the bottom line is the ARB is just not comfortable with this. We've gone around about this, and I think we're going to keep wasting your time and each other's time. I think we put together a fantastic package. ARB likes it, we support it, we think it's going to look great, but we want to have to be able to see each of the tenants as they come through. So hopefully if you guys go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry, then I think, is it okay to bifurcate the storefront designs with the guidelines such that we federal can go ahead and start building these storefronts, and as tenants come in, if they want to augment, change, whether it's the color or an eyebrow or anything else, they come back to the ARB, but otherwise that which we've presented and has been designed can be approved and moved forward with?
This is Sean from the ARB. Can I ask you a quick question, Sarah, regarding that? Because that's where I was headed earlier. And when we look at on paper in the colored renderings, you know, there's a separation between the tenant mixes or tenant spaces. And if you're going to build it according to what you have here and sort of pick the color palette to get started, then my recommendation is that we approve that plan going forward. And as you just said, that, you know, the tenants would have to come back for anything in addition to what you've already established, according to the guidelines you're setting up. And that would be my question, is that, are you really going to do this so that it's not all black on the bottom of building 1, or, you know, all green on the bottom of building 3?
No.
And, you know, is it all going to be the same storefront? That's where I was going earlier, because, you know, if you're going to do the delineation between the spaces in the different architectures of the windows and the mullions and the columns and things like that, then I feel more comfortable making a recommendation that you've established, you know, a 70% baseline and the tenant gets a 30% choice in what's left. And I think that 30% is what I think we're all concerned about.
Yeah, so that is the intent, that the designs presented is what we would build. Obviously, there's a scenario where we have a tenant that comes in and they say, I don't want that palette. I feel very strongly that my brand is green and I want my storefront to be green, in which case you would say you're entitled to make that pitch to the ARB, but that would be a change and they would have to come back. So what we're really looking for is approval of the design as a baseline, and had hoped to get the guidelines approved as a part of that. For example, if we have a tenant that comes in and they say, I'm in space 110, Federal, in your base design, you showed the door over here, but the door works better for my tenant layout being moved to the right. So to allow us to have some flexibility with the tenant to not have to go back to the ARB for something that I think is relatively a minor change.
Well, I think the ARB can get to a place on approving this look as is. You guys can move forward. Although, based on this look, I would probably add some changes as is to it. Like, I think one of the members talked about like a different palette, you know, something on a couple colors, like a rust for a gray, maybe changing out some of the black. There's a lot of heavy black. There's not a huge coastal feel to it, the coastal community feel. I personally would also, one of my comments I didn't even add, because if this was a template, I would like to do what Marion Castell referred to, Sarah, where the building as a whole has one whole look. Every storefront is different than the buildings on top. It would be nice to have seen buildings that had a continuous look and feel all the way down. I wonder if some of the ARB, if anyone else has any comments on this, and if there are or there aren't, then we can just get to a place that says incorporating the comments I just kind of summarized for you, and any additional ones to where we are comfortable with this look, and any changes different to it come back to the ARB.
Yeah, Sarah, David Humphrey from ARB. I mean, the scenario that you mentioned just there about a tenant, you know, choosing the door in a different location, you know, I don't know whether there's three scenarios that are like that you could present and say, you know, are these okay to, you know, work with a tenant, you know, without coming for a full approval, so that we can get past this step with the tenant. But then obviously there's, you know, a lot of the enhancements that are identified as things that, you know, it's been, I think, you know, our consensus that we're not comfortable with all of those selections being made without it coming to this board. Similarly, I don't know whether like the color modification, you know, might be something that, as long as it are the colors that are specified within the palettes that have been approved, whether that's okay. And then anything outside of that would require us, I mean, you know, for looking at the individual enhancements, I mean, something like applied materials, to me, that's more of a major enhancement. But, you know, is an awning, you know, can an awning be part of the base design that is approved, and therefore they can either choose that, and, you know, that's, you know, built into their space. And if they want to do something different, then they would have to come to the board. Also, how do you see, you know, the actual signage packages going? Obviously, you don't know what those are now, so, you know, that is totally up in the air as far as what selections might be made. Obviously, that goes partly to, you know, whether it's an eyebrow or whether it's an awning, but, you know, have you thought about that at all? As far as, you know, whether those would be, something that you're looking to expedite, or whether that would be something that, has to come to us to look at.
So we do, in terms of the signage, we do have signage guidelines that have been approved by the ARB. I want to say it was back in 2019, to set up a framework for, how tall can the letters be depending on the size of the tenant or location? Can it be illuminated or not? And we had a bit of a trial run, I would say, with the signage guidelines when we went through the ARB with Walgreens. We had an example of a sign that complied with the signage guidelines that the ARB said, yep, we're fine with that. It complies with the signage guidelines. We don't need to hear about it or see it. And then there was a blade sign that was being proposed that did not comply and therefore was coming to the ARB. So I see that process working similarly. Obviously, Federal Realty will review these drawings from tenants to confirm that they're in compliance with the signage guidelines and that we don't have too much going on in terms of where we have awnings and eyebrows and signage and everything's being thoughtfully knit together. In terms of other modifications, I know I gave the example of moving a door location. I think one that we know we'll need is louvers. So in the storefront guidelines, we incorporated what we call a louver band or a louver zone, where we know each tenant will require louvers depending on their size and their tenant-specific use for fresh air intake. So perhaps that's another change that we all know, louvers will need to be incorporated and can only be incorporated in the band that we've contemplated within those guidelines.
Liz Geiger here. Sarah, can you guys come back to us again? I know this is a painful process. I'm sorry to you, but come back again with a fleshed out storefront with the materials all selected, the colors all selected, and then also a list as part of this package that says what those changes are going to be that you want leeway on, whether it's a moving of a door or louvers. If it's just two things, list those out so we can get comfortable with them. Because it sounds like anything beyond that, maybe a door here. I don't even know how I feel about a louver. We have to see it, but beyond that, it sounds like the ARB is not going to be okay. We're going to want to see it all. So I think you guys got to come back to us with a plan. With this layout decided, this is the colors, these are going here, this is going here, this is materials going here, so we can all see it. And anything changes from that, then they come to the ARB. If it doesn't, then roll ahead. Let's approve it once and all next meeting, but have it all laid out. I know, Rebecca, go ahead.
Sarah, just having worked in retail design and knowing, at least for the corporations that I've worked for, how particular they are about carrying their brand throughout the United States or even internationally, I think one of the questions I have, and just thinking outside of the box, is it seems to me, and I've never worked on your side of projects like this, but that you must have 2 or 3 tenants in mind, or maybe even, anchor tenants that have already agreed to being in your corporation or in your development. And if you could come back with a few examples, and maybe at that point, if we had 2 or 3 examples of what they were going to look like, then it would be much easier to figure out what the remaining space is and what leeway we might be able to give you. That would be my 2 cents.
That's a great suggestion, Rebecca. Liz Geiger. Sarah, do you want to say anything else? I know this is not the result you wanted. I'm sorry. I can see in your face, and I know you guys well enough offline. This is not what you wanted, but I mean, we've been dancing around this for a while. I'm not sure what else to say to soften it.
Yeah, I guess I can appreciate that there's a lot to digest within the guidelines, and totally understand kind of breaking that down in terms of better hitting where the ARB's comfort level is. I guess I was hopeful that we had been there enough in terms of the materials and the actual designs that were presented that we could at least get that approved tonight.
I think we need to see something more concrete.
Liz, it's Sean, ARB. My question is, Liz, can we give approval on the window styles and the separation of spaces as drawn? and tell her to paint it prime white until they get the color palette set up, because I think what she's looking for is approval to order glass and doors and get building the retail side, as opposed to worrying about the cosmetic colors on the outside. I mean, if we don't have any discerning, separation on these things, and it's okay, for the separation on the, these separate tenant mixes, then I'm a proponent of approving the style of glass, prime, call it primed linen white. And she's got to come back for every individual color and awning and other pieces. But I really don't want to be the one holding her up in construction or ordering glass because of where they are in supply chain issues right now. I mean, if she can guarantee that this is what it's going to look like from a Windows setting per retail space, minus the ones for the specified tenants that are in negotiation, but even then I'd want to see that glass too. I'm good with waiting for the color palette later.
Well,
For
I
them
guess
to
that
submit
makes
it
the
later.
question, that begs the question if everyone likes this as presented. Like, for me, I never looked at this and approved this as presented, what I'm seeing, what we saw here, like with those windows. Is every ARB member likes the style of everyone of those buildings set up? If that's the case, sure. If we have a majority vote, that's great. I don't think we do. Is anybody else in for approving the windows and doors as pictured here? If that's that's the look?
Yeah,
Dave
but
Riley.
without the colors.
I know, I hear you. Dave Riley, yeah.
Dave Riley, ARB. Yeah, to Sean, to your point though, I think you have to order the glass and the muntins in a particular color. That's just part of the specification process. So again, I think to approve it as is just the first step, but knowing full well that there are going to be changes, probably many changes down the road from the individual tenants. And I think if there are tenants already lined up, do we approve what is shown with the caveat that on the next meeting that we see samples or even full-on presentations for tenants that are going to be occupying these spaces, so that we can, it's almost like a trial run. It's like, okay, so we've approved the base palette, which I think is what the goal here is. And now we have 3 tenants who want to do this, this, and this based on these guidelines. And if there are deviations, then we're able to address them. We're trying to picture ourselves going through this process without having gone through the process. But we need something, or they need something out of baseline approved. And how many iterations they'll have to go through to get it to where we like it. I mean, there's just too many storefronts, and it's a palette of 4 different options that we're working from. It's like, oh, well, I just happen not to like this all being all black over here, but I do kind of like this kind of lighter palette over here. Can you put it over here? And I might disagree with that. So I think we will just be chasing our tails on this. If we don't address them individually, which I'm kind of more in agreement with that now than I was previously. I was more thinking that there would be, I think, that percentage of deviation from this base palette that would warrant our review. It's like, okay, let's approve what we have, but every tenant that comes through has to make a presentation to the ARB. I personally would think that there's within that realm, if they're just taking what's there, then it could be just a desk review. But if there are changes that incorporate the elements in these guidelines that are different than what's shown on this drawing, then it comes before us. So I would be in favor of a favorable report with stipulations. I don't know if what I said made sense, but there's, I think the challenge of moving it forward, getting it to aesthetically complement our town, but also giving a certain amount of freedom to the tenants and to the branding are all equally important. And I don't think we should put one in front of the other.
So Liz Geiger, so again, Dave, so when you say favorable report, as is what you're seeing right here, or favorable if they come back, show us the fleshed out storefront with a couple of their key tenants who will have selection of their exact design. They'll know ahead of time what they want.
That is in essence what I'm saying. Yeah, that is what I would recommend an approach, but I'm totally, fine to be overruled on that. That would be my position.
I think everyone's saying that. We got to wrap it up. Sarah, are you guys have clear marching orders?
Yes, I guess the only point where I'm unclear is if there are concerns about the actual glazing layout, because I thought that was agreeable.
The part of the major what? The glazing, you said?
The windows,
I know.
windows.
So what are you saying about that?
I think when I think it was David had asked, are we all in agreement that we can move forward with at least the window openings from?
We're not.
So then what are the concerns with the window openings? I just want to be clear so I can address it next time.
Does anyone have specific changes at all to the window glaze? I think what it is, we want to see you come back with a final layout, like this is what it is. These are the colors, this is the palette. And if you do have, to their point, if you do have those anchor tenants, they'll know exactly what windows they want. They'll confirm that they do in fact want, 8/8 windows. They do want, ceiling to floor windows. They would know that exact, so we'd be able to see the actual real proposal of those 3 anchor tenants and then see it all with the rest of the proposal.
All right, this is Sean from ARB. I got to look at this from a real estate development point of view. And, at some point in time, you either have a tenant or you don't have a tenant. And Liz, this is where I'm getting stuck because at some point, Federal has to close in this building.
Yeah.
And they may have 90% no occupancy. They may have 10% that's occupied, but they have to close in the building. And at some point, hang on. At some point, we, the ARB, have to pull the trigger and approve some glazing that goes forward. And so that's why I was saying here, if we took the colors off of the glazing and made it all linen white or white, I don't care what color it is, silver, and recognize that every single tenant has to have a different color following a approved palette scheme, that allows Federal to go forward and order the glazing at some point in time and close in their building. Because, Corona, leasing programs, Norotan Heights, I don't care, whatever you do, maybe they don't get retail tenants, but they have to close in the building. And so we're going to have to approve something to close in the building.
Right. I know. So everyone's saying the same thing, Sean, but we're saying we got to wrap it up. We're saying the same thing. We want to see, we want to see it with the tenants. If they've got 10% occupancy.
Liz, hang on. I disagree. Stop. Everybody stop. We may be in a hurry, but this is one of the detriments to not sitting in the same room. I am in disagreement with the board right now because somewhere along the line, we as a board have to approve the closing in of this glass. You cannot let Federal continue to build this and not close it in. So I don't know whether they can do this with a silver or a standard or an unmarked mullion. They have to come back to us. But at some point, we have to approve glass. And it has to go in. And, otherwise, we're going to sit here 9 months from now, we're going to have, 60% of this is still going to have plywood in the front of it. Great for a leasing program. But I look at this and say, we can sit here and argue over the 4 palette choices of colors. But if Federal can come back and say, all right, I can build this exactly the way you see the windows in here. We'll put a silver up, and then every single tenant has to come back and choose their colors, their awnings, their, eyebrows, their names, everything. That's fine with me. But at some point, we have to let Federal close it in. And I don't feel like right now with the discussions that are going on that we're anywhere near that point. And I'm recommending that we take a hard look at this right now on this glass, because I don't care if we go to 9:30 tonight. We have to move forward on this. We can't keep pushing them off. So, Sarah, the question I have for you is, can you do this glazing with no colors and paint it later, anodize it later? If you can't, then we have a problem. But If you can go forward and do a standard bland color and get your glass ordered, then we can take a look at the glazing that you have with no colors. And
John,
get
you're
you
making the presumption that everybody loves all the windows and all the storefronts. Everyone thought this was a rough proposal. You're saying, so that you're saying.
Liz, we talked about this in other meetings, and we've all kind of looked at the glazing and said, hey, this all looks good. We all wanted it separated. We wanted it broken up by tenant. We wanted it broken up by cornice. And now we're backpedaling.
Okay, do we have a board vote? First of all, Sarah, answer the question, if you could order this in a standard glazing, in a standard color.
This is Peter Pitzer from Streetwork Studio. These materials are all metal panel. They're really great and the finishes are permanent. But if we had to order it all in white in order to move forward and paint it, Sarah, do you think that we can make that happen? Because it could be painted as far as I know.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can with metal panel. I think mullion might be a little bit more challenging, but I think it's certainly doable.
So this is Peter Pitzer again. I just want to mention the material palette itself. The material was very carefully selected based on the architecture above. And the nicer materials were placed where there are projections in the residential above so that everything lands in a really cohesive way that matches the building above and has a similar impactful. So those materials are selected and coordinated in locations that make the most sense for the overall architecture of the building.
Sarah, I think one of the things that would just be really helpful, maybe you want to say no comment, but is what I was talking about. How many of these, what percentage of your buildings or this project do you already have anchor tenants for? And if we came back at the next meeting, could you feasibly show us those, and therefore we would have a better sense of kind of the direction going forward?
I mean, we're in various stages with various tenants in terms of, you know, leases signed, commitments, meaning LOIs, and just conversations. We can certainly endeavor to advance some of those storefront conversations with some of those tenants by next month.
I guess to me,
two questions.
Rebecca Morrison, again, ARB, I guess to me, and again, having worked in retail, it seems to me that you also are, and I understand where you're coming from being a developer, but that you're sort of backpedaling, because it seems like if, and I understand where Sean's also coming from, but you, without getting some sort of approval from some corporations, it seems like you're spinning your wheels sort of too, because they're going to make changes really quickly, even if the storefront is up.
Okay, may I make a comment? Marion Castell calling. Obviously, we have to close them in, and I don't know why we couldn't. You're not going to keep changing any of the windows and doors for any tenant that comes in the next year, or, you know, that's going to be pretty much centered. You're going to, whatever you decide on your doors and windows is going to stay. You can't do it every time someone moves in, right? Can't we just get an agreement on 4 styles of windows and doors, maybe, without anything else that we all seem to agree on? Because they're not going to change it every time a tenant moves out. That's there to stay. So why would the tenants, I don't understand why the tenants have a choice of what kind of things to do, and then new ones come in and they have to change it all the time. You can't do that with doors and windows, right?
So this is Peter Pitzer from Streetwork Studio with Federal Realty. I think the answer to both of those questions is the set of palette is pretty much going to be there. There isn't going to be much modification to what you're looking at unless the kit of parts is approved. So what you're looking at is the base storefront design, and then as the tenants come in, they will apply their branding to it, whether it's a sign or it's an awning, but they're not necessarily going to change the colors that you're looking at because they have been very strategically placed.
Okay, Liz Geiger here. Go ahead, Dave Humphrey. Sorry, Dave.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask one question, David Humphrey, ARB. As of last meeting, what had we approved? Was it the
Nothing.
material pallets?
No, I mean, the material pallets have been the same since November of 2020. In July, they were the same again. I don't think we heard any negative comments on the color palettes. This is the first time we're hearing any feedback in terms of not liking some of them. But unfortunately, last month, we didn't have much time to present and we got pushed to this month. So there was no formal approval or recommendation on the storefronts or kit parts.
So Liz, as a board, have we approved the material pallets?
Yeah, I think, yeah, Liz Geiger here. Yeah, where everyone's okay with the material palette. I think we're saying that. We just want to be able to see them as they're integrated in conjunction with one another. So to Sean's point,
So I think the issue then is the layout of the storefronts and the placing of the material pallets at this point, right?
Correct.
Okay, so Sarah, I think to you, is it possible to tell us that what we have?
I think you went on mute.
Sorry, thanks. So Sarah, could you say that what we have in front of us is the proposed final layout of the storefronts and the placement of the material selections where we could make a collective decision on whether we would approve that or not, and then we can move to enhancements.
Yes, I can say that is the proposal, is that the storefront designs that you see would be the final designs built. Should a tenant come along and want to change any part of that, we would be back before you.
Okay, so we can look at this as a board and say yes or no on whether we feel we approve the storefront layout, which includes the glazing, as well as the location of the material pallets, which have already been approved. So
Can
I
the
guess,
board look at this right now and give a favorable report saying they love everything? They love the windows, the glazing, in colors, everything. I don't think anyone was looking at that. If you can, that's great. If we can approve this. But I'm not going to sit here while we all take a look at this for the next 15 minutes and make changes. Like, I'm not going to waste any more time here. So for federal's time, our time, and the waiting about applicants. So can anyone look at this and say they give a favorable report, like based on what is on this, for them to move forward with this exact layout, color, materials? Dave?
I would give a favorable report because, as I said before, we can go through 1,000 iterations on this and not everybody agree. What I'm seeing now has been thought through and I would have no exception to it. And as previously stated, as tenants come in and make their changes, and that would need to be presented to the ARB. That is my position.
This is Sean, ARB. I agree with Dave.
Sherry Green, ARB, I agree with that. I think we need to give them the green light to go forward.
yes, David Humphrey, ARB. Sorry, I got a little feedback. I would agree with that. I think one question here is the louvers, whether those can be placed, because those are more of a built-in element than an added enhancement. Sarah, I don't know whether, if that needs to be addressed, whether this is something that, you can send us a final version that we can, all look at. And if there are any changes from what we're looking at now, approve that, from now before the next meeting. But then, as Liz had stated a while back, I think it's important to come back and start to actually plug in the final enhancements that will be on each of these storefronts, so that we can start to look at that and see what, that actually does to the design, so that we can kind of make our recommendations there.
Yeah, so all the designs that you see do not endeavor to incorporate the louvers because it varies depending on the tenant size and use. So if we want, we can treat that as an enhancement that we would have to come back to the ARB for approval of. We know every tenant by code will require it, but if you guys want to review that final location and how it looks, that's agreeable.
Rebecca,
Marilyn Castell, I think that we should have to approve the pattern panels. That would be the one thing I think we need to approve.
Marion,
But-
do you approve this as is though? Like right now, are you favorable of this design?
But I'm not, you're saying we will not approve the panels at the moment. I think that we should not, I think that the windows and the doors, if you want, you can do that. But when we're getting into the panel patterns, I think we should look at it as a committee.
Let's call that an enhancement. So there's a lot of enhancements that are proposed. Let's look at material palettes, storefront layout, and the position of the material palettes,
Mm-hmm.
which is what are on these elevations.
So Marion, you're in favor?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be in favor of everything I think we should have at least a say on the panels before they put them in. If you want to do the doors and what kind of muttons you have, that's fine. But I think when you get into this enhancement design, I think we should use that as an exception, that we should see something that comes through that end of it.
So that's a majority vote for you, Sarah. Liz Guy, you have a majority vote. People approve this. I want to go on the record and say I give you an unfavorable report. I don't approve this. So when this comes built, I want to make sure that's noted for everyone here. Rebecca, Leslie, you guys are welcome to give your vote as well. But you do have a majority either way, Sarah, to move forward with this minus enhancements. Any enhancements should come back to us for review. Rebecca, you gonna say something?
I'm fine with the windows, but I'm not fine with the materials, so I am not in favor of it.
Leslie?
I'm in favor of it.
Sherry?
I still have concerns about going back and addressing this. I don't want to give it full 100% approval, but I just am afraid that if we start going around in circles with rethinking all the glazing, we could be at this a year from now, and meanwhile nothing has moved forward. So I don't know how to come to a compromise, which is why I denied saying anything in the beginning, because I don't know how we overcome this and not end up, I think it's such a slippery slope. I think we could end up with craziness here if we're not careful. Especially when people start putting things in the windows and the signs and the different colors. I think it could go off the rails quickly.
Hey, this is Sean from ARB. I'm going back to the beginning. I think that we need to improve the base design, and every single tenant has to come back for approval at that time. But with the base building, you've given federal a chance to close in and get their supply chain figured out. And every single tenant has to come back for approval for their palette and their cosmetics, if you will. That's my position.
Sherry Green, I second that, Sean. I think that would move forward more cautiously. But I agree they need to be able to close this building in and move forward a bit.
Okay, Sarah, a majority vote approved to move forward with the base design of this, your windows and doors. Come back to us with changes to materials and enhancements. Is that clear enough?
Yes. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anything else, guys? Great, good. Moving on. Thank you, guys. We'll see you guys next month. We're jumping back to ARB number 20. Number 21, we got Crepe Choupette. Dave Genovese is here. Dave, we've all seen the presentation. So we don't need a real overview unless there's anything you want to say that's not in the application.
No, I think it's sort of a simple, hopefully a simple one. Adil is on as well with me, and I apologize that we were late. We thought the meeting was at 7 somehow. No, it speaks for itself. I think it's relatively straightforward and kind of simply elegant. I hope you all agree.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Okay, we're gonna run through the list of everyone, 8 at a time, take notes, and at the end, you can make a comment or we'll wrap it up. Starting with Sherry.
Sherry Green, ARB. I think it looks charming. I approve.
Dave Riley, ARB. I approve. My one question is there any sort of lighting for either the blade sign or the signage over the window? I don't see anything immediately apparent. It's just clarification. Otherwise, I approve what's presented.
For now, that was the intention of no lighting.
David
Rebecca
Genevieve,
Morrison.
no talking until it's through.
Sorry, I forgot. It's been a while.
Rebecca Morrison, ARB. I think it looks wonderful. I love it.
Sean Brown, ARB, I approve it too.
Lisa McCauley, ARB. I think it looks inviting and it's good for the Connecticut Main Street charm.
I think it looks charming. Marion Castell.
David Humphrey, no additional comments.
This guy here, no other comments. So Dave, do you want to add anything? Otherwise, it's a favorable report. Anything
No,
else to add?
we're just grateful and looking forward to a deal getting started.
No. See, that's what happens when you go after an application like the one before. You just slide right through on those.
Got worn out. Yeah, but the problem is I won't sleep tonight because I'll be thinking about our downtown at work.
No, this was a good application too. Okay, so we're going to jump into the next one. Number 22, that was Compass Real Estate at 1090 Post Road, also with you, David.
Yeah, same situation. I think it's relatively straightforward. Just a point of clarification. This is a temporary office for Compass. We will be putting them in this location while their permanent location is built at the bottom of Corbin Drive in the rough location of the Tibbetts Real Estate Office today, or what was Tibbetts Real Estate Office. So it's pretty straightforward. It's a temporary location, and you'll see, I think, or I guess it'll all be resolved to figure out how we go through the existing signage program that was approved for Corbin versus like what the conversation was you just had. But this is temporary and I think relatively straightforward.
All right, I'm having you go on mute, David, and we'll go through the group again.
Sherry Green, ARB. I think it looks fine. I'm a little bothered by all of the writing in the window, but since it's temporary, I think it can pass. I approve.
Dave Riley, ARB. I have no exceptions.
Rebecca Morrison, ARB. I agree with Sherry. I think the sign looks great. I think that the window signage could be a little bit less pronounced.
Sean Brown, ARB, I agree with your other comments made and approve it as
Lisa McCauley, ARB. I think it looks great. I think that the signage on the front door is redundant though. Thank you.
It's fine and it's temporary, so we have to eliminate extra stuff in the windows permanently later.
David Humphrey, ARB. No more comments for me. Thanks.
Liz Geiger, sounds like everyone's favorable, David, but with a request to possibly lessen some of the window signage. If they're stuck to it, it's temporary, so okay, but what do you think?
I tend to agree with Leslie McCauley on that door signage. I would let me see if you could. I would respectfully ask you to approve it as is, and then I'll try to negotiate with Compass that we remove that. I don't know. Is someone from Compass maybe on this call? I don't see a name familiar, but I can take that up with them directly.
Okay, so favorable report with a side request to reduce the door window treatment if possible.
No
Okay.
problem with that.
Thanks, David.
Thank you all very much.
Okay. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, guys, moving on here. We are at ARB number 23. This is Parklands Drive. I believe Robert Gillen or David Ball, you're here to speak on this.
Hi, good evening, everybody. This is David Ball. Let me just, is it okay if I show my screen?
Sure. Liz Geiger here. David, yeah, I'm gonna tell you, we've seen this presentation, so we don't need to do a full presentation for you, even though I'm sure it would be lovely. I'd love you just to do a recap. If there's any important points you want to touch on that you want us to note for the presentation, and then we'll go right into ARB comments, okay?
Thank you for that. I guess a couple general points. We're really, you know, I don't if you could see my screen, but basically we're really connecting the project to Selleck's Woods, and that's both improving access to the public and also making that a feature for the tenants. You know, beyond that, I think you have a pretty good idea where the site is and where the existing building is and that sort of thing. So I had a fairly lengthy, I've got a timer in front of me of 8 minutes, and I was going to have Matt Pop talk about the landscaping for 2 minutes, but if that's not necessary, I'm fine with that.
Liz Geiger here. Yeah, Matt, if you want to do a 2-minute overview of the landscaping, that's great, especially if that's an integral part of your design and you want to touch on it, that's great. I don't want to take away from you guys, but I just want you to know that we have looked at the materials. We're all familiar with it, so go ahead.
That's fine. If you want to, so go ahead, Matt.
Good evening. I'm Matthew Pop, landscape architect from Environmental Land Solutions, Norwalk. David, I don't know if you could put the landscape plan up.
Oops, sorry about that. I went too fast.
And I'll just go through it quickly. Starting on the.
There you go.
Yep, starting on the kind of on the right-hand side, we have a circular drive. That's the entrance to the building. That's going to be a paver. It's kind of a courtyard drive right there. It's a warm tone of paver. That paver carries over towards the building, towards that walkway, right where David's pointing now, and it kind of wraps around. And then right where David's pointing now, that's the kind of the outdoor courtyard area. We have a serpentine walkway that snakes through that area. That kind of tried to create a trail-like feeling to it. If you could zoom in, there's 3 sitting areas in there that the sitting areas have the same pavers that's used in the front walk. There's 2 grilling stations located in there, and there's tables on obviously the sitting areas. And there's also tables could be used on the lawn areas as overflow. 2 types of plantings. We have kind of the ornamental plantings around the building and some native plantings along the perimeter of the site. Just to go through kind of the plant list quantities, we have proposing 39 trees, mainly maples, birches. The birches are used kind of in that serpentine walk bordering that, and oaks. The oaks are used along the entrance courtyard, and the maples are used along the drive towards the top of the sheet that wraps around the building. We have 23 shadblows. Those are kind of like the flowering trees that we're using. They're kind of tucked in kind of the nooks of the building. And we have, let's see, 22 spruce hollies and evergreen magnolias, which kind of screen the project. Also, to screen the project, we have a number of arborvitaes, the green giant arborvitaes, mix of shrubs, deciduous and evergreen flowering shrubs. The light poles, there's some there's a detail kind of on a planting plan, on landscape plan on the right-hand side of the sheet. It's somewhat similar to what is there now, but I think it's more clean line, and they're 10 feet height. And those are, the light poles are used kind of in the parking areas along the access drive. In that same detail, we have a small bollard, which kind of matches the fixture of the light pole. And the bollards are used in the courtyard area. They're all 3000 K, so it's a warm tone fixture to that. They're all downlit, dark sky compliant. And I guess one additional things in the back, from the building to the nature preserve, we kind of have the pavers again are used again, going across the travel way right there. So that's kind of the landscape build plan. Quick, be happy to answer any questions.
So
Thank you.
let me, if you don't mind, I mean, let me just spend a couple quick seconds on this. You know, so you know, the basement plan, what we've done is this is Helix and Dunlap Woods. We've made a very important connection with the fitness center, which is at this end of the building at a lower level. And that's where and by the way, we're adding a gazebo and enhancing the parking for the public at this end of the building. And so that's a really important part of what we're doing for the building. We also have an elevator at each end of the building. This one in particular is to, connect with the fitness center and also connect with Helix Woods. And at the front of the building, we have an elevator there to connect with the front entrance. This is the entry drive. This is the courtyard that Matt talked about. And this will be the amenity space and lobby connecting directly with the courtyard. So to really enhance the connection with the outside. These are typical floor plans of the units on the second and third floor. The roof, we've got mansard roofs and gable roofs that will act as mechanical screens. This is a low pitch roof at the top, and that's where the mechanical units would be. The outside of the building, couple things we've done is we've introduced, for the massing, we've introduced a series of gable elements and also bay elements to break up the massing and add visual interest and also sort of reinforcing the residential nature of the building. We've also broken down the facade into two-story elements throughout. So typically it's 2 stories of lap siding and then white panels with lattice at the top. And there are some gable elements where you have stone on the first floor and then a 2-story element at the top. And also enhancing the gable element with windows and a metal roof for the return at the gable. This is a section through the building. You can see we've got 7'6" of height to mask any mechanical units. And then as far as the outside of the building, I think one feature, and I'll jump to one, at the entry where we've got the circular driveway, we've got a semicircular trellis at the front, and we've also curved the front wall with a major gable element at the entrance with stone below to sort of tell everybody this is where you enter the building. And that curved element adds some interest, but it also simplifies the facade instead of a lot of ins and outs. And then beyond that, you've got a pretty good idea of the materials. What we've typically done is at the gables themselves, we've got shingles, and then at the infill in between, and that's a lighter beige color. And then at the infill, we've got a medium gray type color. And then throughout, we've introduced, sections or groupings of windows in panelized systems. And that's typically at the living areas of the units to, just add a lot of life to the overall architecture. And then in the courtyard itself.
Dude, I gotta cut you off. We gotta move here. I mean, this is great. We see it's a really nice presentation. This is great. Can we jump to staff comments?
Sure.
So if you guys are familiar with how this works before, each of the members go through, you guys go on mute, and the guys will go through and they'll make comments or questions. Just write them down, then we can address them again at the end. So Sherry, go for it.
Sherry Green, ARB member. I think, thank you. I thought that was a very comprehensive package that we had, and I particularly enjoyed looking at the landscape plan. I don't know whether all of those are approved plantings, but it certainly is comprehensive. Thank you. It was very thorough.
Dave Riley, ARB. I have a few comments on the facades. Again, since it is such a massive building, I think your strategy of trying to break up the massing is for the most part very successful. I am a little concerned about some of the really narrow kind of end elements with the gables on it. I think the bays are, in general, to me, are more successful than the gables, particularly where you have like the two gables where it's playing out. They seem to be kind of competing against each other. And again, I'm not offering a solution. This is just an observation. So I'm just wondering if it could just be that there's maybe too much stuff put on those gables, because you have those narrow gables, those narrow masses with the gables, but then you also have the small square, rectangular bay below the upper band. It just seems like a lot is being fit into those gables, whereas the bay windows have a little bit more of a simplicity, and they tend to kind of be a little bit more harmonious with the overall facade. So that was my main comment, is that the narrow gables seem a little overdone, and if anything, I would look to maybe trying to sort of dial them down a little bit. One other comment is on the entry with the curved facade, which I think is very nice, responds to the circular drive. And again, it just because it's the bird's eye view on it, perhaps, but the one gable that kind of just goes straight back, connecting the two kind of end gables, I have seen where there are curved facades, and then the gable itself actually follows the curve of the facade with the cornice as well, which in my opinion is kind of completes that sort of element. And it could be by doing that, then the gable at the end, not the entry gable, but the other gable, could be maybe a little bit more incorporated with either a larger gable or something that can kind of tie it in together a little bit. Again, I think from below it might not have the impact of what I'm observing from above. So if you're a pro, then you see it. And last comment is, again, with this large roofscape and without seeing the extent of the mechanical units, I'm just questioning whether there is an opportunity here. And again, this is nothing that would ever be seen. It's just a comment about whether there's any roof terrace scape, like a roofscape opportunity to be used within that overall. That it seems like there's an opportunity there that, again, as long as there's not mechanicals everywhere, or if you group the mechanicals accordingly, that could be an amenity that could be kind of complementary to the rest of the building. Thank you.
Rebecca Morrison, ARB. I agree a little bit with Dave. I do think that the massing looks large, and I'm not sure how to do it, but how to break it up. One of the things that I considered was whether you considered using any French doors or allowing tenants to access their own exterior space, but somehow breaking up that lower band of windows or adding trellises to lower the eye level and not just have it so uniform. That's it.
Sean Brown, ARB. I concur with Dave and Rebecca, but I have a question in aerial view from the east and view from the north in the renderings. There seems to be a very large rock out front or something. I'm not exactly sure what that is, so if that could be clarified, that'd be helpful.
Leslie McCauley, ARB. Liz, quick question. Does this project fall under the commercial parking lot tree list?
It does not. I think it's back in no, it's back, but it could be considered, as far as just overall town aesthetics, but off the park there, I don't think so.
Okay. Moving on. Wondering what the pergola was made of. Also, to kind of soften the architecture, I was wondering if you would consider growing maybe ivy up all of the trellises that you have around the property. Another question I had is number 9 in your notes, that you have deciduous tree trunks will have 4 feet chicken wire fencing. And that looks like you have at least 69 trees covered with 4 feet chicken wire fencing, which might not be a great idea. And then I guess the last is the entire parking lot is planted with one species, Quercus palustris. So wondering if maybe there could be another species there. Thank you.
Marion Castell, ARB. I think the idea of Dave's or somehow or other doing something on the flat dormers area on the lower level with trellises or something to bring your eye down and not just see that flat bottom to the whole area. And certainly the bays do help a lot. Thank you.
David Humphrey, ARB. Yeah, feel similar to some of the other board members, but want to make the statement that I do feel it, especially because of the massing, the material selections and the design is too monotone. I don't like the fact that the AZEK paneling, pretty much spans the entire band of the 3rd floor. I think considering, kind of how long this structure is, I think you have an opportunity to potentially use, different or potentially the same exterior siding from the 1st floor to the 3rd floor, like a townhouse look that would help break up, this large structure, this large massing. At first thought, maybe it's the fieldstone as the, kind of 3rd major material that you're using here, or 4th major material. But again, I don't see a reason why the 2nd floor pretty much always has to be the siding, and then the 3rd floor being the AZEK panel. I don't mind it in some instances, but I think that should be explored. I think there's too much kind of consistency, again, along 1st floor, 2nd floor, 3rd floor, also with the window layouts. I get that this all has to tie to bedroom layouts, but I think there could be some additional thought put into breaking this up a little bit. I second Dave Riley's comment about the narrow gable ends and having that little architectural feature not really fit in some of those. Maybe it fits in the wider ones, but there's certainly a couple where it just seems to kind of be squeezed in there, and I don't think it works. Couple other comments. I believe it's the west elevation. It's kind of an awkwardly acute angle that separates 2 portions of the building, and I'm wondering whether anything can be done with that. I don't really know why, that was kind of fit in that way, and how that could actually be used, because I would imagine adjacent windows there don't have the right clearances for light and air requirements anyway. I saw the windows are specified with simulated divided lights. I would much prefer and would recommend using true divided lights, especially because you don't have a lot of muntins within the window selection. So I don't think it would be a big, budget ask, essentially, because I assume that's what it comes down to. And yeah, I think that was it for now. Thank you.
Liz Geiger here. I have no additional comments. David and Matt, is there anything you want to specifically address? It sounds like there's going to be some edits that need to be made and come back for a revisit to the board at the next month meeting. Is there anything you want to say, though, push back on here, or any other questions you want to clarify?
Again, Matthew Pop. I could start. I think I agree on the trellis is doable. The chicken wire around the trees is just to protect them from deer. If we could do something else, I think that would be fine too. I just wanted to make sure that there was a note on the plan that that the trunks are protected. And then the 6 pin hooks in the front, we can certainly change maybe like the first 2 trees to another shade tree like a linden, or even maybe a smaller growing tree like a yellowwood. So I think that's it for the landscaping.
Great, thank you. You're on mute, David. You're on mute here.
All right, sorry about that. So the Dave Riley question or comment about the entry and the curve, I just want to clarify, or Dave, if you don't mind chiming in, some clarity about that. So is the idea that this gable element may become part of the curve, or I'm not quite sure where you're going with that.
Dave Riley, RB. Should I be jumping in, Liz, or let them go?
Yeah, let's. Yes, I don't want to use this time to well, we're going to put all the edits in a letter, but if there's clarification they need, let's work those out now so they have good marching orders. So please, thanks, David.
Okay. Yeah, my comment was, and again, going back and looking at some of the imagery. Yeah, this curved element, but then, the gable just kind of cuts straight back between the two, and then the curve comes forward. It just seems like that roof, and again, the 3D images kind of show that the best. Looking at.
So you're talking about the mansard roof above. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. My comment is you've got this cornice that's curving out, but then this roof that is kind of sort of trailing away from it from below. It just,
I got you.
I think there's a little bit of visual discontinuity there. Just whether the roof itself should follow that curve or maybe even eliminate it between those two. I think actually in looking at it, eliminating it or setting it further back, just something, it just would allow that element, I think, to read a little bit more strongly.
I got you. Okay, that makes sense. I didn't quite. All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
David, are there any other questions or thoughts about any of the ARB comments? Do you agree, disagree, things you can incorporate, work with, things you strongly object to?
It's very helpful comments and very thoughtful comments. So I think it's probably best for us to, we're jotting down notes, but if you have a written layout of this as well, that would be helpful. But we'll step back and look at them and do our best to respond to them.
Okay, I think the takeaway, so this is your first time coming to ARB, the takeaway is the boards is overall pleased with you did a great presentation. I'm really pleased with what you guys have here. I think you guys, seems like you guys are almost there. Just some small changes. So we'd love to have you back at our next meeting and hash those out. And then I think hopefully we can get a favorable report at that next meeting, which would be third Tuesday in October.
Okay.
Okay. All right. But you guys did a great job. We really appreciate it. And thank you for keeping it so brief.
Thank you.
There's a lot in there. We love it. Thank you.
I will send you my notes with a long presentation so you could read it separately.
Fantastic. I would love that. You can work with that.
That's a joke.
That's right. If you have notes you want to send, please send those to David Keating. We do look over this stuff, actually. We're well prepared. And like I said, I will write you a letter and I'll recap those changes for you. So you'll get that. And then Dave Keating will email you a copy of that as well.
Very good.
Okay. Thanks, guys, so much.
Thank you.
All right. Last one of the day, guys. We've got ARB number 24, Norton Heights Shopping Center. John and Joe Vaccaro, and I believe Bob Maslin is here presenting for them.
Don't forget the pond.
Yes. Look, you got a full group. Okay, Bobby, you are a wizard of words, and you do a great presentation. But I am going to keep you short. I'm literally going to keep you under 5 minutes. I have tasked ARB to read this whole presentation, look at it thoroughly, so we know what's going on here. If there's any highlights you want to hit on, go for it. But I think it's better use of our time if we start a discussion and get ARB comments sooner than later.
Yeah, all right. Can I have the screen? Who's in charge there, Fred? Hello? Oh, wait, do I have to push something here? Let me
You
see.
should, Fred should have granted you, no?
Oh, here we go. All right. All right.
Share.
Yeah, hold on.
This is about motorcycles.
No. Where the hell's, oh, here it is. Hold on. Okay. All right, that's in. Now I have to go over here and do that and share. Okay. Slideshow. Can you see the slideshow there?
Yep,
Okay.
got it.
Just have to get my own screen straightened out here.
You gotta get moving, Bobby. You got
Okay,
30
all
seconds down.
Okay, let me just tell you who's here first. I'm here. Robert Maslin, Jim and Greg Palmer are in the room with me. John and Joe Vaquero are here. Phil Cerrone is online. Matt Pop is online and Rob Pryor is online. We're here because we've made some modifications to the plans. In a nutshell, we're changing some of the space in building number 1, which is at the corner of Hollow Tree Ridge Road and Heights Road. And we're changing a portion of building 2, the western portion of it, from retail and 2 levels of apartments to parking garage on 2 levels and apartments above with a little amenity space above, and reconfigure the outside surface parking, internal drives, etc. To accommodate that, modify the public plaza areas as necessary due to these changes. I wanted to just note that previously the first level of the corner of building 1, which was right out at the intersection, was modified previously to become an inside parking garage level at the surface level, and that's now changed to hopefully the Goddard School, which is a child care center that will occupy that space. So to make up the parking, which I think there were questions about previously, we have 2 levels of garage parking in a building that's going to be topped off as apartments. I'll just breeze right through these. You'll see here the red areas here are the areas that are changing. And that's I wanted to present it to you that way so you could just focus on what's changed. The original plans and red squares around the area that we're changing. This is a perspective with the parking inside here. You see there's openings here. Again, this red area represents the area that we're changing. This is the same part of building 1 from Hollow Tree Ridge Road. Now we get to the modified plans. Computer generated perspective here outlined in red are the changes. Again, this is just first level here on building 1, and building 2 is now a parking garage topped off with apartments. So it'll look from certain viewpoints as if it's just part of what was there before. It's just got a bigger footprint. This is Matt Pop's landscape plan. Again, it's pretty densely and nicely landscaped originally, and he just modified this. There's a little area up here outside in the amenity space that's also landscaped. The original main plaza area was here. You'll see a couple of computer generated perspectives showing that. And that's the modified landscape plan. As you may recall, this little strip that goes out to West Avenue will be landscaped or re-landscaped, if you will. And just in case there's any questions about the lighting, this is the light pole. Down here we have 2 diagrams of bollards, the benches here, and this is a armillary, whatever it is, sundial, which is in the middle of the plaza. And there it is, right here. Little water feature in the middle here. And the parking garage with the apartments is back here. So it kind of blends in. You wouldn't know it's a parking garage looking at it from Heights Road. Another view from Heights Road, looking pretty much from the train station looking northwest. Again, parking garage in the back. Close up, this is that sundial thing here. And again, parking garage. You'll see the windows from the apartments upstairs. This is another view. This is now building 1, and this is the part that's going to change. Over on this part of it, we're looking at really facade changes, and that's basically it. So we're going back to a retail look, except that inside the building will be the Goddard School. Again, this view from Hollow Tree Ridge Road. And here we are with elevations. This is the south elevation of the parking garage, entrance, exit. Over here, barn door type, I guess, doors in the front here, elevator shaft over on the left. The second level of parking has what look like windows, and then your apartment levels up on the top. The lower elevation here shows a ramp that goes up to the second level. So if you want to get into the second level, and this is going to be apartment residents only upstairs, the ramp is over on the left here, and there's no connection between the first level and the second level. And there's a connector bridge, if you will, right between parking garage and apartments and the rest of building 2. Another elevation, again, this, not quite sure what I did here. This looks more like building 1, so I got a little typo down here. Building 1 over here, elevations, you've seen the perspectives before. South elevation, this is the west elevation from Hollow Tree Ridge Road. Make believe this 2 is a 1 down here. Your amenity space, that's for the apartment dwellers, not open to the public. And I have material, instead of putting them on boards, we have pictures of them for you. And I believe if Phil picks up or anybody here thinks I make a mistake here, just jump in. These are siding samples.
Hardy board.
What is it? Hardy board. Hardy board. Again, siding samples. More siding samples. These are the shutter colors, the green and the blue.
These colors have all been pre-approved.
Yeah, these so far, everything you've seen has been pre-approved. The shingles and the antique gray stucco and stucco driftwood. And now we have the garage over on the left here, precast stone, iron gray number 14 for the siding, whitewashed brick also for the siding. And then we have shingles and then a metal roof, charcoal gray. And questions? Did I do that quick enough, Liz?
Thanks, yes, Bob. This Liz Geiger here, ARB. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. You did. By the way, I'm going to call it one correction for you. You guys say in your thing, all this has been pre-approved. Anything that was approved before, just FYI, scratch. Like you guys are coming to us fresh again, new buildings and stuff. So I'm gonna call that out. Not that I don't love them.
Not really. Not really. The buildings that are outlined in red, those are the only changes. Everything else, we're basically trying to retrofit or modify, rather, not retrofit, but modify only portions of
Right.
this.
Well,
It's
I mean, I don't
basically,
there was an ARB approval for the original plans that came through. I think we were in the process of looking stuff. ARB never gave final sign off. If you have that, I'd love to see it, but
okay.
But anyways, let's talk. I was hoping that was a minor edit. Okay, you guys ready to take some notes or let everyone go through again? And at the end, we can discuss. Sherry?
Sherry Green, I'm going to just jump right to something and let the architects discuss the building. I'm going to jump right to the Goddard School and the outdoor play area. What kind of safety precautions, how is that going to be framed out?
That's going to be governed by state law because the
I'm sorry?
child center is licensed by the state and they have certain security requirements. What I can show you Oops,
Bob,
wrong
can you
one.
hold that thought. Take a note. We're going to go through the whole list, okay?
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Go on mute for us, Bob, and then let everyone go through, and then you can respond one by one. So Sherry, is there anything else, Sherry?
No, that was the thing that just jumped out at me. And as I said, I'm going to let the architects discuss the building, but that was sort of close to my heart and popped out at me. So I would like an explanation of what's happening there. Thank you.
Dave Riley, ARB. I think the building one modifications, I have no exception on. It, preserves essentially the fenestration that was there, and I think the new use for the building will be very welcome in this part of town. Though both my kids are in elementary school, it would have been nice to have this a few years ago. My concern is the parking, the two-level parking garage with the apartments above and the massing as a result. And again, this gets into comparing to what was reviewed before to what's being presented now. It was helpful to have those those reviewed before images, and these are the changes now images, because it did help refresh my memory a little bit more so than just looking at the materials that were provided. That being said, my question is, the ramp going up to the second parking level, does that follow the natural grade? And if not, that's a pretty tall retaining wall. I'm just thinking of the residential properties that are backing right up to that. I know there is a pretty significant rise in the slope up toward the back there. That also raises the question about how the massing of the building will be viewed from the properties along West Avenue. We got into extensive debate about this regarding the BMW building. So, and I think in my mind, this is kind of sort of hitting on some of those points about how the people who live on these streets are going to perceive what's happening behind. The images you showed were shown from Heights Road. I'd like to see some images from West Avenue, like between the houses, or what would it be like to be living in a house and having cars driving up that ramp day and night, shining headlights into your back windows. So that is a bit of a concern for me. That plus the again, the massing of the apartments on top of that garage, how do they compare with the roof lines of the existing buildings? I think a site section, including up to West Avenue, would be very advisable through that structure. Otherwise, I think this gets in sort of what we were talking about in the last presentation, is taking the massive building and trying to break down that massing a little bit to make it work within what I think, overall, there's some really nice demarcation of the different structures and how they've been handled in terms of their fenestration and the roof lines. This then is this large building tucked in the back. I think some of the approach with the buildings on Heights Avenue would be well suited to the facade off of the kind of courtyard, in between the buildings, looking at like the south facade. That just to me seems like it would be very dominant when you're occupying that space. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Rebecca Morrison, ARB. I think overall it looks really great. I love that it really does fit the look and feel of Darien, and that there's a uniformity there that really is appealing and really soothing to the eye. I agree with David that I'm a little bit worried about some of the massing and the height. I think one of my questions, and I couldn't figure it out just really quickly, was how this differs in height level to the Federated project. And that's it.
Sean Brown, ARB. I don't have any further comments. beyond Dave and Rebecca. Thank you.
Liza McCauley, ARB. I had a couple of questions. The roof deck, was wondering, I believe it called for panel pavers. Are they iPay? I was just wondering if we could have more information on that. And I'm not sure if you saw the recommended street tree list or the parking lot tree list for Darien. There's a bunch of trees here that aren't on our lists. Thank you very much.
Marion Castell. I go along with Dave in his West Avenue view and the ramp issue and what it would look like. That's it for me.
David Humphrey, ARB. Yes, certainly second those comments about how this fits into the adjacent streets, adjacent properties, views from there. So I think sections and either renderings or views from those vantage points would be helpful. A few other comments I have. One was about the actual color of the siding that is called blue or some sort of blue. So I assume that was one of the photos that you provided. But those color renderings that you put up on the screen, those weren't in our packets, and I don't know whether I missed them from an online link, but if you can provide those, I think it'd be really helpful, because it seems like this is a very flushed out design from the documents that you put up on the screen there. I believe this is part of where we left off last time, but I was wondering whether there was any opportunity to have a little bit more screening at the openings into the garage area. I know that there's, limitations there with what you can do, but there was a couple things discussed last time around. And based on where those openings are, especially those openings that face the courtyard, I think it should be an area of focus. And that was one of my other comments was, you're creating what seems like a really nice inner courtyard area where I assume there will be some retail, so there's going to be foot traffic. So I think the design of those openings into the garage, also the barn doors, which I think were mistakenly tagged as shutters, hunter green shutters. It would be good to know what material and finish you had in mind for those barn doors. But going back to the idea of what that will look like from the people who are hopefully spending time in this courtyard, and whether there's anything more that can be done with those openings to look into the garage. Kind of right with that, the storefront style curtain wall or curtain wall that it looks like it's the stairwell for the garage. I'm wondering whether, I know that's somewhat typical, but since that aesthetic is not incorporated anywhere else, could that be something that fits in with the rest of the design elements that have been chosen? Maybe it matches, I don't know, a little bit more of the retail storefront, but that just kind of stuck out again because it's kind of standalone as something with that type of design. You mentioned precast stone as one of the materials that you had a photo of. I just wanted to confirm whether that was the precast concrete cream colored, which is identified to be, I guess, the walls of the parking garage. Also, speaking of materials, clapboard siding is shown for the siding material of the structure above the driveways. Yeah, clapboard siding is trim. I'd love to see a little bit more detail there on what that might look like, because it's kind of a big massing element. I mean, I think typically you would see more of a precast stone finish there, because ultimately it's kind of, especially the way it's shown in the architectural drawing, that looks like it would actually be mimicking, precast stone blocks that were originally, used to hold up a structure like that. So if it's different, just want to confirm. If it's not, would love to see a little bit more detail related to you know, what, how the clapboard might be used to make up that, you know, rather large part of the facade in that area. And one last thing, the roof spires, I don't know, for me, don't seem to quite fit in with the rest of the design palette, but that's kind of more of a minor thing. And I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Liz Geiger, ARB. All right, last thing here. I have a couple things. I'm going to read a set of notes from one of our members who's not here. I'm also sending you a link on the GoTo group chat. I just sent it to everybody. It's a link sent from one of our members who's not here. She writes, I think this application really needs to look at a better architectural precedent. I don't believe you guys have done a successful adaptation of architectural styles. I do reference a large landscape stair, which is what I just sent you in the link, as a potential connection to the site. Here's something to consider, and it's this large staircase you'll see in a link. Let me know, Bob, if you don't get that. She further writes, I'm not suggesting a giant stair, but something that can become more a place for people to sit and hang out, eat, or socialize. It becomes another green space on the property. That's one set of comments. My set of comment to that as well is, first is I really appreciate and love what you guys did with that center green space kind of courtyard. I know we've kind of talked about this offline. I think you guys did a great job doing that. Other projects have lacked that, and it's a good adaptation of parking space, pedestrian area, courtyard. I love that. My question to that is two small concerns. The building in the back is big, it's heavy. We're all dancing around this big, large, kind of awkward, less attractive building in the back. I know it's tucked in, so we're kind of giving a second thought, but people are gonna be hanging out in that lovely courtyard area, and they're gonna have this massing building over them that's gonna create an atmosphere that's just not very pleasant to be in. And I know your drawings are far along, but I wonder if there's a way to kind of reduce that massing, literally reduce it, not just visually, but reduce it, the front section of those apartments. So it's just not like this structure, like, you know, heavy over where these pedestrians are hanging out. And I look at the layout, and I know you guys didn't touch the parking spaces between where the grocery store currently is and where now the old buildings are, currently the demolition zoned area. And I guess I'm kind of wondering why maybe there wasn't thought of possibly reducing some of the mass of this large apartment building and kind of building in part of that parking lot structure. So that was a question for you. And my other thing was, Leslie made a great comment about the trees, about them not being on the parking and street tree list, which is a great observation, but actually in this area, they don't have to be. And Leslie, we even talked about this offline. We have not talked about this, but the trees in this area, we actually do have a little more adaptability because it's zoned to different areas. So we purposely left the trees to more interpretation here. But that said, I think, Leslie, we need to talk with them to make, between what we've decided for Federal Realty and what's done here on this site, whatever you guys are calling it, we also got the Palmer site, the trees should match. There should be some cohesion between the two sites so this area is consistent of trees. Yet it does not have to match the downtown project. And an extension to that, you guys showed a beautiful street view of the Heights Road, how that would look. And you showed some plantings and a flowering tree. I want to make sure that you guys, what you're showing us there is something that's actually been screened by Fred, Donnie, and not Fred, the gentleman who does in our Public Works building, because I know Federal just went through a lot of issues where they proposed street trees that were close to the street, and they proposed a sidewalk here that was scratched later on because it didn't come to town standards of when they had to clean and do towing for it. So while what you guys proposed looked awesome, John, Joe, I know you guys have been through this. You guys design, sidewalks all the time and do street plantings. I just want to make sure what we're seeing is something that's going to actually be done. And if it's not, I just want to make sure it's cleared so that you guys are showing us something that looks good. So those are my comments. All right.
My turn?
Yes, your turn.
Okay. All right.
Do you want me to start and address some of these things?
Why don't you just got it real quick?
Why don't I just go through, Phil, and you can jump in as.
Absolutely, go ahead.
All right.
Go for it.
Okay. Goddard, I'll start off because that was the first comment. Goddard's over here in this part of building 1 on the first level. There's a fenced-in play area along here. It's in there. It's faint, but it's in there. The security around that is fencing, solid fencing that is basically a matter of state regulation and the Goddard's overall design standards. I'm not sure if you had another question about safety or security for Goddard, but Goddard's all over the country, and I'm sure that they're not going to stand for anything less than appropriate security for their facilities. Did that answer your question? I think it was, I forgot.
Hi, yes, it did. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Parking garage. There were several questions about the parking garage relating to the materials, a question about the ramp and the massing, et cetera. Let me start with the ramp. Well, first of all, the reason the parking garage is the way it is because we need a certain number of parking spaces. And as this project developed, it turned out that underground parking was way too cost prohibitive. And now that we have the Goddard School, which is going to fit a community need here, we need the 2 levels of parking in this parking garage. And when you take into account parking space dimensions and aisle dimensions, this is what you end up with. And on the look of it, what was here before was a 3-story building, retail on the first level and 2 levels of apartments. We end up with, yes, a larger footprint, but we still have 3 stories. It's the same height, pretty close to the height of the original portion of building 2. It's consistent with the other aspects of building 2. So it fits in that regard. This ramp does not count as building according to the way they handle the BMW ramp situation. It's not the existing grade, it's existing parking area. So it's going to be raised up, and in the pitch of it obviously is going to have to meet the standards for generally parking garages, but specific to Darien, the fire department and emergency vehicles that might need to get up there in a hurry. So that's the deal on the parking ramp.
Did you want to mention the height of the first floor is pretty spacious underneath there.
Well, yeah,
It's like,
I mean, the
14 feet.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, that was the retail anyway, pretty much. But the question came up about lights as you come up and down this ramp. Yeah, we'll have to address that. I don't know if we have anything specific in here. Phil, Saron, can you shed some?
Yeah, so let me shed a little, no pun intended, shed a little bit of light on that. The plan is as we get to the top, we would carry the wall up 4 feet, so that would shield all the lights. Also, the back of the parking garage, the side of the parking garage, which is on West Avenue side, is half of that is built into the hill and actually acts as our retaining wall, and the rest of it is solid. So you won't see, A, you won't see any lights, and B, you won't see any cars from the West Avenue properties. The only thing you'll see is the 3rd level of apartments, which, as Bob said, is the same as the apartments we had previously. And in fact, although this is a 3-story building, on the village roadside, on the inside of it, the massing might seem a little bit bigger, but the reality is that we designed it as really 2 stories and then set back the residential units, which are above it. So before you had a 3-story straight up wall, so you actually had a much taller wall on the village side than you do currently with our design.
Okay.
Mention the screening.
All right, a site section for West Avenue, we can get something for you. Let's see, Rebecca had, overall looks great. Height difference between this and Federal. I haven't compared the height of the buildings here with the height of the Federal buildings, but I would note that Federal is separated from this by a good sized parking lot, a bank branch, Palmer's Market, a parking lot out here. Oh, you can't see what I'm pointing to. All right, here we go. Okay, this parking lot, the bank branch, Palmer's Market, this parking lot, a parking lot back here. I think this is, might be the Prayer Factory, right?
It is.
And then Edgerton, and then you get to Federal. So this complies with the building height limitations under the zoning regs for this zone. So I would think that it being allowed, we should be okay. Let's see. Roof deck. I didn't
Bob,
quite
Bob,
understand.
Bob, can those points, can you make sure you guys give some elevations on your next presentation with some site cuts? I think you referred that, I'll put that on my letter, but.
Oh, what do you mean?
You mean elevations of that parking structure?
Yeah, ground level, like when you're standing ground level, seeing those elevations from West Avenue and from.
Oh, yeah,
Heights
yeah, okay, I got you. I got you.
And site
Right,
cuts of the building.
you want a site section, basically.
Yep.
Okay. I wasn't sure what the question was. Roof deck, wood panel.
That's for Matt to answer.
I'm not.
Matt Pop.
Matt, can one of you jump in on this?
Yep, I'm not sure though what the exact material would be. Would be IPA or would be some type of composite that looks like a wood. It's be like a 2x2 panel that's set on pedestal, so it'd be raised up slightly. So that hasn't been determined yet. It's kind of interior to the building.
Right. I think on our drawings we call them out as IP panels, but it's going to be that type of look.
So
It'll look like it.
Okay, so I think you're talking about this amenity space.
Correct.
Here.
Yes,
Oh,
in there.
All right. Okay. All right. So that. All right. And then Marion goes along with Dave. Questions about West Avenue and the ramp, which we're going to address. How it fits with the adjacent properties, renderings for the adjacent properties. I think that's all rolled up into what we're going to come back with. Siding, I guess, colors and materials. There were a couple of questions on this. Phil, can you jump in on that and just point me to the slide that you might want to refer
well, I mean,
to?
on the renderings, on the straight elevations, I mean, we have a legend that calls out the different colors on where they are. I'm happy to answer any specific questions, or we can just walk through what the colors are. We can obviously, we have samples of all the colors of the Hardy. We actually have the Hardy board samples here. We can, if they want, we can drop them off at Town Hall for you or whatever you want, but.
This guy here, I'm gonna jump in, Phil. Yes, can you guys make sure all your samples go into Town Hall? We saw them once before, but we don't need to go over them again here, but put them to Town Hall and have Dave Keating shoot us an email when everything is there. And along with, again, full drawings, in color, so we can compare them.
Got it. Okay. And then I guess the same in the material. So I guess you just want us to provide more specific detail on.
Yeah, if I could just clarify, I think it was David who brought up the precast. The precast is just sills and headers. It's not the actual front of the parking structure. The structure itself is going to have a facade of the whitewashed brick. So it's really just the opening sills and headers. And one of the things we did different than when the garage was on the corner is we raised all those sills up. So they're minimum 42 or 48 inches above the parking structure. So headlights are going to be much lower than that. So we purposely kept the sills of them higher and minimized the openings as best we could. Obviously on grade level, you have to drive in and drive out. So those openings are going to be what they are. But all the openings on the second level and any other openings on the first level are well above headlights. So all those openings that are on the second floor there, they're the one in the middle, I think, is 42, and the rest of them are all at 48.
Liz Geiger here, but just to round off that conversation about materials, you guys were on, I think, and heard us talk to Federal Realty. If this is your locked-in design and these are your locked-in storefronts, like let's make sure that's clear now so we don't have to go back and forth in that. Like it sounds, I know Joe and John are great about locking in their design. They don't go back with their tenants. So if we're seeing the final window styles and the final materials per each building, just make sure that is clarified and we're going to see those samples in town hall and they're not going to change.
Well,
Liz,
that's
that's where we are. Yes, Liz, that's
Good.
where we are.
Great.
I don't know if I'm asking the wrong question here. Were they back and forth at Federal on individual storefronts?
They wanted to have individual, Liz Geiger here. They wanted, to customize. Yes, they were back with individual storefronts. They came to us and proposed a set of materials that they were going to use on site. Like these are the materials, but they didn't lock in where those would go. It was like they could do brick here and then brick there. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't locked in. It wasn't site specific. So that's where the problem arises.
Yeah, we're not gonna do it that way. We like you, but we don't want to come back every month for 6 months.
Please don't. Please lock it in.
Okay. All right, and then Liz, you had some comments about, well, reducing the massing. I think that'll be covered in the perspective.
I'm worried about light getting to that courtyard. We've seen this before. People design courtyards and they don't think about the sun effects of it. And the courtyards in the shade for 90% of the operable hours of the day, and it doesn't get the traffic you envision it to get. It's therefore an unsuccessful build.
Okay, so this, you're talking about like this plaza here?
All of your plazas. I mean, they're up against 3-story buildings, you know? So.
Yeah. Oh, sure, but this is north-south. You know, you're looking
This
north
is the
on
main
this.
plaza.
So this is this is basically a good one, and I understand what you're saying, but it is open to the south, so that's where you're going to get most of your sunlight, I would think.
Third floor parking, third floor apartments. The parking are set back, so they don't overhang. They set back by.
Yeah, you can actually see how they.
Right, so you can see, right, I know I can't point, but you can see the parking garage is basically 2 stories and then the third floor is set back. So whereas the adjacent, all those buildings you just looked at are straight 3-story buildings, which or the rendering you just looked at, everything that's there is what's been there for the last literally 5 years. I mean, on drawings, not in reality.
Yeah,
but.
Liz Geiger here. By the way, like the argument, not to just kind of be tough on you guys, but the argument about what was there doesn't really resonate with me so much. Like there's got to be a better argument than it relates back to what was there 5 years ago, because the drawing 5 years ago weren't overly impressive to us. We weren't all on board. But that said, like I don't have a productive solution, so I'm sorry for bringing up like the massing there, but I just want to make sure you guys are going to put a lot of money into a beautiful courtyard. I want to make sure it's successful. So I'm thinking through, like, if there's massing building all around it and it's going to be in the shade half the time, I'm asking the questions now. That's all. I do not have a solution. I apologize that I don't.
We appreciate that. And it was 5 years ago, it was a different team. We appreciate that comment though.
Okay, and then the last thing that I think is, Liz, you had comments about the parking and parking for the grocery store. And I guess the stairway that goes up to the West Avenue strip there.
Well, one of our other board members, Liz Geiger here, one of our other board members said there's a missed opportunity for that stairway of creating another space, which I think is a great idea there.
All right, hold on. Let me just, let's talk about
and then
that.
my point there is you got a lot of parking area. You've got a lot of compact building densely put in one area and then a lot of open air parking. Like I understand from an economic standpoint, probably why you did it. But I'm proposing the tough questions. Like, you know, if there is some density reduction, if that parking lot could be used better, or the structure could be displaced better in, you know, in some of that parking area.
Okay, so this, I want to just address this comment about the little walking strip here. This is not part of the overall Norotan Heights Shopping Center site. It's got a different owner. It's part of the Palmer's Market site, but it's a different ownership, different situation. Palmer's have the ability to landscape this, but and improve it to a certain degree. And they've done that. This was in the original plan. Matt Pop took another look at it and may have updated it a little bit. I'm not sure. There's a utility easement through it. There's a power line and a telephone pole or two through it. We're doing the best we can with something that's off-site here, and it does provide access, upgraded pedestrian access from West Avenue. As far as the parking lot is concerned, this whole area is shared parking with the bank branch here and Palmer's Market here, and this parking down here sort of as well, but there's other tenants down in this part of the building.
Talk about the green space that's in the middle of the parking lot with it.
Yeah. But if you're asking Liz about redesigning this parking, that's just not, it's just not going to be feasible, because you want to be able to come in this drive here, which is part of that Palmer Market site. It's not part of the shopping center property per se. And there's a three-way parking agreement between Palmer's Market, the bank, and the shopping center. And this major portion of the parking lot, it's because of its location, serves both Palmer's Market and the new development.
And the bank.
This part down here, the bank is not a major traffic demand type use, but these spaces down here are shared as well. There's a traffic parking lot island here that's going to be upgraded, landscaped. It may be reconfigured a little bit, but this has trees on it, but there's quite a bit of green on it. There's a sidewalk, but it doesn't take up the entire width of this strip. So that'll be landscaped. These end pieces are going to have landscaping on them. They're not going to be all hard. There'll be curbs, obviously, but where they can be landscaped, they'll be landscaped with lawn or plantings or whatever. Don't know if that answers your question, but I gave it my best shot.
It does. And what about the stairs, like the opportunity for a staircase to address Alex Lopatinsky's?
I wasn't quite clear on that. Is that up here?
I thought there was so it's all grade from the parking into the courtyard, into the entrance courtyard of those buildings?
There are stairs there, both sides.
Which?
Left and right. She's talking about the courtyard down here. She thought maybe.
Oh, down there. Oh, you're talking about down here, Liz?
Yeah. And I thought there was a second.
Hold on. I think we have
a picture of that.
I thought we had a picture.
Again, this isn't my comment, guys, but just as an opportunity, a missed opportunity. Yeah, an opportunity to create more of a place setting here. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's
more of a what?
Creating place setting, creating an opportunity for people to gather, for kids to sit on stairs and chat and make it more of a.
They're there.
Give it a design element, create function and design together.
You need to look at the link she sent.
Did you see the link I sent in the group chat?
Yeah, Liz, I saw it. Yeah, Matt, I don't know if you've seen it, but we can all take a look at it. Basically, it's like the Spanish Steps in Italy. That's basically what it is.
Oh, I don't have that because I have this thing up and I can't get to the. I can't really.
We can certainly have more wider steps there.
Yeah, what it is the steps go all the way across the whole thing, and it's got a little bit of landscaping in it, but it's basically like the Spanish Steps in Europe.
I think that's possible.
Okay. I know. So what you're really saying is this entire width here, make it stairs.
I think her point wasn't simply that. I think that the point was more like there's a missed opportunity there that could be, you could creatively think about how to integrate steps, function with design there to make more opportunity for a welcoming space. I don't have a translation for that again for you on what that actually looks like, but yes, it would be probably maybe, yes, a wider staircase, consider different railings, different landscaping. I mean, different landscaping issues there.
Right. David Humphrey from Airbnb. I think right now it's a very commercial looking, feeling staircase transition from sidewalk into your courtyard. I think the point of sending the link, which is, a much larger design, but it's the concept, like Liz is trying to get to, of transitioning from sidewalk into your courtyard and making that as inviting as possible, and potentially playing with actually gathering on that transition point.
Okay, all right, we'll take a look at that. Just keep in mind that we have a thing called developed site area, and we need a certain amount of landscaped area at a minimum. And we'll take a look at all of this, and we still have to comply with all the zoning
What we're
requirements.
talking about is taking away green space.
Yeah,
putting
that's
in
what I'm
more
saying.
concrete.
Yeah.
And frankly,
That's not necessarily it.
the ARB wanted to see more green,
Yeah,
less concrete.
Yeah, right. That's why Bob is saying,
Yes,
we'll take a look at it.
look
and-
at it.
Yeah. and
Yep.
Right.
see.
I sent all you guys the link in case you didn't get it.
Okay.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, I just can't get it on my system as long as this.
No, I know. That's why I emailed it to you just now, so you can get it later.
Oh, okay, all right, good. All right, I think we covered as much as we could.
Yep, we're gonna jump in. We got two more questions. Dave Humphrey first, and then Rebecca Morrison. We'll have two more questions.
Yeah, a couple additional thoughts here. One, my comment about the curtain wall adjacent to the stair tower that I believe serves the garage. There wasn't a comment made there. Again, the point was it's a very commercial element. It's obviously somewhat common, but in those instances, there's other elements like that within the overall design that I didn't see here. So I just wondered whether there was a different choice that would fit into all the other window and storefront selections that were made. If you can actually go back to that last rendering that you had, because I'm going to jump through a couple items here, the modified view of public plaza.
Let me just, this is what you're talking about here, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I mean, that elevation to me feels disjointed. And I guess what I'll say next is on the opposite side of that red box where you have that little arched opening with what looks like an actual window below it on the right side of those barn doors. When you look down your courtyard from the street, that's going to be your focal point. And I'm just wondering whether there's an opportunity to make that a little bit more of an aesthetic focal point instead of kind of like an afterthought. And also there's a little bit of a disjointed piece between that big building and the one next to it, which is kind of right to the left of that red line that makes up that box.
I got it.
So again, I would keep in mind that whether it's people walking down the street or people coming through your courtyard, they're going to look over that sundial and that's what they're going to focus on. And could it be, something designed to be more of a standalone, part of that structure, which I think would also help break up the facade. So if we're looking at this.
So you're really talking about these two sets of windows here, openings.
Just, again, be conscious of the fact that that's a focal point when you're looking down your courtyard, and can you add something there to make it a little bit more, unique or stand on its own.
Okay.
Looking at this rendering, those columns or those pilasters, again, that just doesn't seem to fit in the rest of the kind of architectural, palette that you're using. And then another thought with these big openings into the garage, I was wondering whether you could put potentially a trellis over those openings, which some actual, residential garages have. It might help soften the look of that large opening, considering it's next to a courtyard where you're going to want people to congregate. And maybe at some point, you could have some ivy grow on that trellis. It might soften that look a little bit. Two other points quickly. the north elevation design, I think we need either a rendering or a perspective, that shows us this here. I think this is West Avenue, what you're actually going to see from there. Right now, this is one big, solid wall. So if that's actually what we're going to look at, I think there needs to be something that breaks up that facade a little bit. And then lastly, I'll just note, once we get these color renderings, I do want to take a second look at the use of stucco and potentially come back to that, because depending on how that actually looks, in these renderings, I wonder whether you need to use another material selection where you're using stucco now, because I think traditionally, that wouldn't have probably been the elevation choice. So I'll leave it at that for now. Sorry.
So is your point, don't use too much stucco, don't use any,
again, it's a little tough to tell from just the color, architectural rendering. It would be great to get these photorealistic renderings just to help judge. I know there's not a lot of it, but
the amount of stucco is extremely limited. There's very, 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 very little stucco on the whole complex, but we'll take a better look at that. If I could just kind of go through all your comments. The north elevation, and we'll depict it better, but what you're seeing, you think is a wall, is actually dirt. That's actually the retaining wall, so the top of that wall is the dirt. You'll never see actually the wall. We just cut the section through basically the hill. So you won't be looking at that wall, you'll be looking over the wall.
Okay.
So I understand that when you look at the elevations, it looks like it's a wall, so we'll depict it a little bit differently so it doesn't look that way. As far as the, go through your things. So as far as the garage goes and the columns, those columns are there actually because they're structural, and it's a precast T-formed garage. So we're somewhat limited on what we can do with some of the elements. So we'll take it. I appreciate your point about that. It's going to be your focal point, and I agree with you on that. And so we'll take a better look and see what we can do there. And we can do something in front of the structure, so the structure is kind of behind it. So maybe we'll play something up on that. It'll be an illusion, but it might work really well. So I do appreciate that point. And you're right that as you come down that center courtyard, that's what you're going to look like, what you're going to look at. As far as the stair tower goes, we were trying to make a different kind of statement there and a different kind of element, being that we had the ability to do that. There's no place else in the complex that it has that aesthetic for sure. This is basically a curtain wall there. And we've toyed around with a bunch of different things there, just doing it out of straight aluminum or doing it out of more kind of an industrial steel frame. That would be just a narrow steel frame in there. So we'll take a little bit of a better look at that too. We did explore a bunch of different options. I mean, I'm sure you're aware, we've gone through multiple scenarios on the garage, everything from just a standard concrete structure, which is the most economical, to what we have currently. I know you had a question on the doors. The barn doors are simply mislabeled as shutters. They're going to be wood barn doors constructed out of wood, and so we'll fix that on the drawing. I think that addresses most of your comments. And obviously, as we make the revisions to all of this, we'll go through it, and I've made notes of everything you've said. So
great.
We'll pick up on all of it.
Liz Geiger here. Thank you, guys. I will also put all these notes in my letter to you guys, so we can just so they're just basically recap. So I'll get that out to you, and Dave Keating will also send you an email in the meantime. Cool.
We're 34 minutes overtime.
I know, you're killing me. This is my anniversary tonight. I gotta go. My husband's gonna kill me.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
It might be the last based on this meeting, gentlemen. No, I'm kidding. Okay, I think that's great. I'll get you a letter. Thank you guys so much. The Vaqueros, Palmers, you guys do a great job. You guys do wonderful work in town. So I know the quality, we all know the quality will be there. The thoughtfulness is there. And we really appreciate you guys working with us and always incorporating our thoughts. You guys are considerate, and it comes out with, I think, a really successful design. So we'll see you again. We'll put thoughts in. We'll probably see you again in October, correct?
Yes.
What's the date of that meeting?
One more time, sorry.
I think it was the 19th.
Dave Keating question.
Yeah, actually, October is an early day. It's the third. It's a weird month. It's early in October, actually. Yeah, yeah. Oh, it is the 19th. You're right. It is the 19th. Okay.
19th.
All right. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Good night.
Thank you for
Okay.
your time.
Thank you, guys.
No, thanks.
All right, ARB members, did you guys get a chance to review, moving on the notes for, we have two sets of notes, June 15th and July 20th meeting minutes. All in favor of approving those? Hands? Leslie, Rebecca, you guys approve those minutes? All right. Fantastic, those are approved. All right, no other business will be discussed at this time. It's 9:05 PM. I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thanks, guys.